What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Blake Harrison, all the way over in Australia. Blake, actor, podcaster, poet, dancer, all of those amazing things. How are you? I'm delighted to have you on for the first time today. How are things?
Yeah, very, very good, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good. I can't complain now. It's always tough when it's one person in Europe, one person in Australia, but we managed to get it done and talk a little bit about MMA. How are you finding Australia and the time difference and all that good stuff?
Oh, it is a pain. It is a real pain. Like from a podcasting point of view, when I'm trying to record with Stu on the MMA Fan Show, it is really difficult to try and get availabilities right. But on top of that, just even like my kids, like trying to stay in touch with the family and stuff like that. By the time I wake up in the morning, my kids have got like an hour before they're going to school, but they're rushing around getting ready for school. Then later on, they're already in bed when I'm doing that. Like outside of work, it's really, really tricky to try and keep in touch with everyone back home. And the only thing I remember from podcasting point of view of, I remember years ago getting Dan Hooker on the show. And he was really lovely because I think we gave him the time and everything, and we were a full 24 hours late.
Oh, fuck.
Because I'd messed up the whole, their day is ahead of our day. But he was very, very sweet about it, and we were able to get him on the show. It was before his Arnold Allen fight. It was a shame for him, but we were a full 24 hours late because I completely messed it all up.
That reminds me of one time I used to work in a bar that served breakfast but also had a nightclub, and they told me to come in at 9 the next day, and I arrived in at 9 o'clock at night, and I was supposed to be in at 9 o'clock in the morning, turned up 12 hours late to work. But look, these things happen. Can you tell us what's happening in Australia, or is that all secretive?
Do you know what? It's one of those things. So many things nowadays are like you can't tell anyone. We're signing NDAs. You can't tell anyone. And most of the time, it's like the first series of a show that no one's ever heard of. Like people are being so overly sensitive about it. I don't get it. But it's not a Marvel. It's not a Star Wars where that stuff is like you understand why they do that stuff. But they still not announced it yet, so I can't necessarily talk about it. But it's like a family movie. It's very funny. It's got a really great cast in it. And we're shooting in Australia for the next few weeks. And then back to England in kind of mid-April, I think. So it's quite a long shoot out here. I've been out here for about 5 or so weeks already. And but it's been great. We've been in Brisbane and they had Cyclone. They had Cyclone Alfred come through, the first cyclone in 50 years. And I was here for it. Thankfully, we didn't lose power. But it was the night before UFC 313, the Pereira and Ankalaev card. And I know this is maybe a little bit selfish of me, but there's lots of people like losing power and it's a real pain for people. And I was like, God, I hope the bar downstairs has still got power because I really want to go and watch Poatan versus Ankalaev in the morning. But thankfully they did, and they were still open. So there was a bunch of people in the bar watching UFC 313, which is a new experience for me. Because most of the time I'm pressing record, going to bed, waking up at 6 a.m. and watching it on a Sunday morning. And as much as when the fights are going on, the atmosphere of being in a bar, even if it's like 10 a.m., midday, whatever it is, it's really fun. It's really great. Like Maurizio Ruffi spinning wheel kick and everyone's like, oh, like that. It's a great moment. But then you have moments like Lemos versus Lucindo. And if I was at home, 100% I'd be like, fast forward. Yes. And I'd be skipping loads of stuff and making like a 5-hour event down to about 2 and a bit hours. Whereas, out here, you're watching it and you're like, oh, God, this is going on a bit, isn't it? And they even wrapped it up 7 seconds early, which I was like, the precedent of that is like, it's not great because if you keep doing stuff like that, you're not going to get Paul Craig submitting Ankalaev, for example, and stuff like that. But I don't think there was a single person on the planet that was going, yeah, I'm really annoyed that you stopped that 7 seconds early.
I compared it to like an under 15s or no, an under 12 soccer match or something. It's like 15-0 and the referee just like, just blow it up. It's over. Yeah. It's that bad. But yeah, that's one thing we miss out on. We don't talk about that often, like in this part of the world. we don't get like the camaraderie of watching MMA with loads of people. We get it the odd time, maybe during, as you said, during the UFC London, which we'll talk about in a while, or maybe if let's say there was a UFC London and we go to the pub here in Ireland and watch or something like that. But I feel like we don't get the Buffalo Wild Wings experience that they get in America. It's unfortunate, isn't it?
It is unfortunate, and it's particularly unique, I think, in Australia, because you can get down to the bar at 10 a.m. and watch a whole card, and you're leaving about 2 or 3 p.m. or whatever it is. It's weird, but it's really fun. It's a good laugh, and there's people in there watching other sports as well. There's like basketball on and Aussie rules football on and stuff like that. And it's a good laugh. It's quite nice. And as you say, you get that camaraderie. And I think that's one of the things with maybe being a European MMA fan is like the whole reason me and Stu do our show is because we didn't have anyone to talk to about MMA. We felt quite lonely in our fandom. Whereas if you're American and you're like, oh, do you want to go to the bar tonight? What's going on? I'm watching a UFC. And then someone brings you in, you watch it, you become a fan. And then you do that all the time together and your friendship group grows. Europeans are just these weird, lonely people watching it at like 2 or 3 a.m. with some Red Bulls being like, oh, God, I hope this fight hurries up and just gets a knockout in the first round. I want to go to bed.
I suppose that let me ask you a question here about 6 minutes into the podcast. How did you?
I've just been rambling.
We'll just talk about how did you get into MMA? It's a question I kind of love and hate to be asked sometimes because I always find it hard to remember. Can you remember when you got into it at first?
Well, I mean, I suppose it's one of those things where I was watching the odd bit. It was on like Bravo, and there was Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, all that stuff. And every now and again, something would come on and you'd watch it. And I remember going through a stage of me and my brother, if we could ever sneak up behind each other, get each other in a body lock, we'd shout Matt Hughes and just chuck him to the ground. But we weren't like massive fans. It wasn't like we were watching every week or anything. And then something happened to me where I think my daughter was either about to be born or only just born or something like that. And there was a lot of time just looking after a baby. And I stumbled on like an Ultimate Fighter series with John Jones and Chael Sonnen. And I was like, all right, I'm going to watch this. And I got kind of so into it. And then that sort of came out around the same time that Conor was just starting to make that rise. And just through complete accident, I timed it perfectly because I got to see all of the Conor stuff, which, very unfortunate what's happened recently. I don't even know if unfortunate is the word for it. But being a fan of his from years ago feels slightly tainted now, given everything that's gone on. It doesn't sit massively well with me. But as just a fan of the sport and to watch, I think any kind of sporting moment, that featherweight Conor rise, the Aldo World Tour press conferences, all of that stuff, it was must-see TV. And I remember being online just trying to find pre-fight press conferences that they were doing all over the world and whatever it was. And then obviously it was such a brilliant moment. Was it UFC 189 where Conor fought Mendes, but also there was the McDonald Lawler card on it. So I think... Yeah. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, that was the co-main event, wasn't it? It was an unbelievable fight.
Unbelievable fight. And I think it was moments like getting into it exactly the right time to see that rise and to see the furore around this captivating, charismatic individual. And then have a moment with the Chad Mendes fight, be like, oh, he's taking it on short notice. Aldo's out. And then that whole card, I remember being a really great card. I think there was lots of knockouts on it and stuff like that. And then you had this iconic Lawler McDonald 2 moment and the stare down at the end of round 4. And then even after the fight, you had the photo of them in the hospital together. And I was just so in. From that moment on, I didn't miss an event.
I suppose a lot of people had that experience, didn't they? I was watching the sport a few years a little bit earlier. I suppose my experience was I got into the this side of it around then, I suppose, and it was just unbelievable for that. But a lot of those people as well, and maybe what you were inferring there with Conor, maybe they got out of it because of that. But a lot of people got out of it before all the maybe the bad Conor stuff came, quote unquote. Yeah. How have you is that love a thing you think you're going to have for the rest of your life? How have you stuck with it? Is the podcast part of it? We'll talk more about the podcast in a second, but how did the love stay? Because MMA is one of those sports where I love the phrase lapsed fan. There's a lot of lapsed MMA fans out there. How come you never became one of those?
Um, I don't know. I suppose maybe it sort of becomes a slight obsession in a way. Like it's kind of because there's definitely moments like, and I see it now, and I don't want to get too political on this or whatever. I think everyone can have their own beliefs and politics and stuff like that. But you're seeing certain connections between Dana White and Trump and Musk and Zuckerberg and all this stuff, and Dana's on the board, and then they get rid of fact checkers and all this kind of, and it's just a bit like, oh, we were tiptoeing, and now we're sort of sprinting into this weird dystopian future where this quite, right wing, powerful, wealthy men are just kind of now in control of all of it, and it is, for someone like me, it is slightly concerning. And being in the industry I am, which is predominantly a kind of very liberal, progressive, left-wing kind of industry, I do have slight moments where I'm like, I'm not going to talk about the fact that I'm an MMA fan, because people that don't know the sport have a perception of it, and that perception is, in my head, like only half right. It's wrong in the sense that they don't know the sport, they don't know the characters in it, they don't know how great some people are in terms of like doing charity stuff, and breaking down barriers, what Dustin Poirier's done, the people like Wonderboy Thompson, even like Molly McCann writing a book about coming out, and it proceeds going Stonewall, and all these different things that you're just like, these are wonderful human beings. A lot of mixed martial artists give back to their local communities, and we should be celebrating that more often. But unfortunately, the side that's in the media, the side that we see more, is the negative aspects of, for example, the accusations and the libel case with Conor McGregor, the old man in the pub situation, the Dana White slapping his wife, and now all of the kind of political connections. I mean, they're getting in with the FBI now, so I don't know what's going to go on there. But to me, so the perception of MMA is sort of half right, because even like some of the fan base, I would say that people that are kind of left-wing MMA fans are the minority. I think most of them are probably right-wing MMA fans. And again, as long as you're happy to have a discussion and be civil about it, no problem with that. I'm not judgmental of anyone for that. But I just think sometimes you get people, particularly in and around my industry, that will go, oh, that's the bad thing. We don't like that. Oh, so does that mean you're one of them or something like that? And it is a bit tiring. I mean, the other thing is I grew up a Millwall fan, not because of any reason other than I grew up 5-10 minutes away from the ground and all my family were Millwall fans. Didn't realise I had a choice till my brother came along and he was a Liverpool fan 4 years later, which,
you took the right choice there.
Yeah. But and so I've grown up with this thing of like, you say you're a Millwall fan to people and they're like, oh, you're like a bit of a thug, or oh, you're a bit like this, or whatever. And it's just like, well, no, I'm just quite a normal, friendly bloke. I'm like genuinely like a really nice guy, I think. Anyway, I like me. So I don't know. It's a tricky one. That whole thing is tricky.
Like I do understand a little bit, because when McGregor came up in Ireland, like they went around the radio stations and the newspapers and were like, oh, anyone in Ireland know anything about this? And it was like, oh, me, and then like 2 other people. And so like I've had to answer those questions. And if people, I'm not sure people around the world, like anyone between my age and like 10 years older, 10 years younger, every single person in Ireland, in the UK, would know who you are, right? So when you are doing a podcast about MMA, you're going to be asked questions, whether it's on shows or doing interviews and stuff like that, and you're put in that position where you have to kind of answer for that. Has that been tough to, like, not just like with friends groups or whatever, but like being on shows? You're talking about your podcast, which is a very positive thing always, and a brilliant, we'll talk more about it in a second, but like to answer some of those negative questions, like, oh, MMA is a tuggery, like should it be banned, and all of those. Have you faced kind of those questions?
Well, I've not had too much of that, if I'm honest. I think generally speaking, if I'm doing like a talk show or whatever it is, you're doing it for like the show you're promoting. And if anything, if they want to get any questions in that is not related to that, it's usually Inbetweeners based. Are you going to do another one? No, I've been saying that for the last 10 years. But it's just like That's the kind of vibe. So I can sort of get away with it. Every now and again, something has come up, but I tend to just try and talk about it from, I like to think, quite a level-headed perspective and acknowledge that, yeah, there is bad. I mean, when the president of the company has slapped his wife and it's been on camera and there's zero repercussions for it, for him to just come out and say, oh, I'm going to have to live with myself for the rest of my life. I'm like, that's not punishment, is it? Like, that's nothing. And then you have situations where you've got Bryce Mitchell saying some absolutely disgusting and heinous things of late. And the UFC are like, well, we can't really punish him because, I mean, the president slapped his wife a little while ago, so it's going to be a bit hypocritical. So maybe we'll just give him a fight against a guy that might knock him out, and fans will like that. And don't get me wrong, we will like that. Yeah. I quite like Jan Silver. I think he's really fun. I enjoyed the Globe at the press conference. But it's not, it's not a level kind of like, I don't know, it's tricky. I would like to see further punishments for people doing the wrong things, and that includes Dana.
Yeah.
But I suppose their thing is, free speech. But it's not always free speech, is it? Because I'm sure that when fighters come out and talk about fighter pay, there's some rumblings behind the scenes, and when they want to unionize, there's issues. And when there was the whole flag thing recently as well, and I still don't know what the rule is with the flags. Like, they could put them up, then they couldn't put them up, and then they could wear them down to the octagon, and they couldn't wear them down to the octagon. So there is censorship. It's just their own form of it, and it's not just free speech. There's certainly rules and there's limits, but it's just what those limits are down to the UFC to decide, I guess.
Yeah. I think the great thing about MMA though is we are very open to have these discussions, where I feel like sometimes in other sports, even talking about like drug testing and the taking of drugs, like we both follow association football. You never hear about it. It's never a conversation. I think it's good. And like, I suppose to transition a little bit to the podcast, and when you started, obviously, I've been a guest on it, and you've had some great guests out through the years, and great chats with Stu, who's another great guy as well, a veteran, I suppose, of the podcast scene. Was that something you just wanted to do to like get your voice out there, have like a weekly platform to speak into the world what you wanted to say, but also have a chance to chat to these great people? Where I suppose was the origins of the podcast? And a question I like to ask myself sometimes, but people like you as well, where you are now, how far away is that from where you planned to be before you did your first podcast?
Oh God, well, I mean, it's a difficult question to ask, because I suppose, being really honest, when I first started, I was like, oh, well, I don't really know anything about this stuff. I genuinely just want someone to talk to about MMA. And if this is something that we do that does well, that'd be fantastic. Then you get a few episodes in and you start going, oh, we could do this really well. I think we could have loads of followers and listeners, and we could make some good money off this, right? Flash forward like 3 or 4 years, and I'm like, oh no, we're paying to do this. Like we're not earning any money. We're completely paying to do this. And it's also at times quite hard work. Like, I don't know what your situation is. I'm assuming that your situation is you are, interviewing, doing journalism, like, if that's what you want to put. I don't know the exact terminology you would want to use, but like, you're in the MMA media space, and I'm assuming that is how you earn your money. That's how you pay your bills.
Yes.
Whereas for me, I'm paying my bills doing something completely different, and then I have to find time to work on all of this stuff. So I have to watch the cards. I have to try and keep up with news stuff and all that. And when I'm working like I am right now out in Australia doing stuff, it's really hard. It's really, really hard to try and keep up with all of that. And so I think realism, I suppose, has kicked in over the last year or two, where you just kind of go, do you know what? I enjoy a lot of it. It is hard work at times, but I enjoy a lot of it. And if at some stage something happens where it goes, oh no, we can at very least sort of break even or take a little bit of pocket money home or something like that, then that'll probably be a bit of a win. But at the moment, it's certainly a pay to play situation.
Nah, that's kind of the common story with MMA. I do.
Yeah.
That was me for like 10 years, I think, until the great people here at Sherdog came along. So, but like, who, like, okay. So one of the questions I want to ask you, you said it to me about your media and or a journalist or whatever, and that's a question I found tough to answer throughout the years, like, because I think I've transitioned away from being a fan, and I wouldn't know what I call myself a journalist either, probably somewhere in the middle. But for you, like, your podcast is called MMA Fan Podcast, so it's a little bit different. But I would argue that your coverage, yourself and Stu, not just on the podcast, but when you've attended events as well, is probably as professional as some of the best people out there covering it, and more professional than others. Is that a thing you wanted to have especially when you went to events covering them, and even talking about fighters, being like a little bit respectful about them? Did you want to be more respectful, but did you want to come at it as from more of a journalistic point of view than a fan point of view? Despite the name of the podcast, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a blurring of the two, really, because we both openly admit, look, like, neither of us have had a fight before. Neither of us are kind of got journalism degrees or anything like that. We're not breaking news, and we don't have kind of these ins with loads of fighters where we're going to get you the fight news first. In fact, that's not who we are. We are fans reacting to stuff, and we hope that you enjoy the kind of banter and our perspectives and all that kind of stuff, and just come along for the ride with us, really. In terms of the MMA media space, it's such a weird space. And for us, I think the podcast I liked listening to was like yourself, was like some of the people at MMA Fighting and Ariel and stuff like that. And I kind of thought to myself, I respect what these athletes do so much, like what they have to go through, not just in terms of the fights themselves, but the weight cuts, the training, the lack of pay, particularly when you're starting off, and what you're putting your bodies through, and putting your families through, the sacrifices of like your loved ones watching you going into these violent situations regularly. It's a lot of stress, I think, and I wanted to make sure I approached that with a lot of respect. And I think, unfortunately, you've got a lot of quite successful MMA media space people now that find a gimmick or find a way of attracting attention, and it's usually through either disrespect or not taking things too seriously or outlandish takes and stuff like that. And to me, it feels cheap. It just doesn't feel. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I say it feels cheap. They're earning more money than I am from it, but it does. It feels like it lacks some kind of substance and something good. I don't know. I haven't got the vocabulary to describe it well enough. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's people out there that you value their opinion because it's based in fact and logic and respect and all these things, and there's other people that I can't personally listen to. They clearly have an audience, but there's certain people out there that I would just switch off straight away, because I just go, you don't even mean that. You're just trying to get the hits on your social channels or whatever.
I think a lot, and that's a great point. I've made a very similar argument many times throughout the years when I'm having the podcast where like 12 people are listening and getting no money for it. But like, it feels like there is a group of people who started watching MMA and loved MMA and didn't start covering it, and those are the people like you and me, I feel like, who have a certain amount of respect, and the other people are like, oh, MMA, that's cool. How do I find a way of getting into that and making something of it? And I feel like that's the other side of it. So I brought you on to talk about UFC London, and we're nearly over time up. So let's talk about a little bit about UFC London here.
You can cut out all of my ramblings, because you ask me a question and I will rabbit on for a good 5-10 minutes. That's okay. So sorry about that. Sorry to the listeners.
Sorry to the editor there. I guarantee you nothing will be taken out of this, because it's all great stuff. Because like, that's at the end of the day, what are we doing? It's a podcast about MMA. We're chatting about MMA. What about Leon Edwards? This is such a big fight for him, isn't it? Because you climb that mountaintop, you get all the way there, and suddenly you're in the biggest night of your life, maybe. At home, you lose. You're no longer the champion, and now you have to do it all over again. Wow. Tell us about Leon Edwards. What do you think of this fight this weekend?
What do I think? Well, look, from a fan's point of view, I think we've lost something. I've heard people saying, oh, well, I think probably a more American podcast, to be honest, but they're saying, oh, well, you've swapped JDM for Sean Brady. That's not a big difference. It's absolutely fine. It's like a good contender for a good contender. I'm like, no, you're completely wrong. The London fans have really missed out here because the JDM Leon Edwards fight is a much more fan-friendly fight. I do think Leon probably would have gone to his grappling a little bit more, but the London crowd is going to be way more interested in seeing Leon on top of JDM dropping elbows than they are Sean Brady on top of Leon hugging him. And so, I know that probably does sound disrespectful, but but you know what I'm saying. In terms from the fans' point of view, in that O2 arena, there's one situation is going to be we're going to cheer this, and even JDM versus Leon anyway on the feet is a more compelling, interesting fight. And I think there's the Aussie rivalry as well. And being in Australia now, I'm hearing from a lot of Aussies that like, no, we don't care about you in the cricket and the rugby. It's probably a bit like Everton and Liverpool. It's like Liverpool are looking down on them going, no, we don't care. And Everton's there, yeah, come on, we're rivals. Whereas, and that's the same thing for England and Australia, I'm finding out from a bunch of Aussies. But for the English people, an Aussie-Australian rivalry is a good thing. It's fun. It adds to it. And I just don't think that the stylistic matchup with Sean Brady and any of that stuff is going to be as much fun or as interesting. So I think London as a fan base, as a card, we have missed out there. I mean, that does sound rich because we've had it very, very good for the last few years. We've had pay-per-views and all that kind of stuff. So can't complain too much. But yeah, I think it's a big one for Leon, man. He's not starting at square one again because being a former champ, you're always maybe just one or two away from the title shot. I think it's clear that Shavkat's got to be next after JDM once he's healed up and ready. But a win here and a Shavkat win against Bilal or a JDM win against Bilal puts Leon right back in the mix. But what the real concern is, has Bilal Muhammad set up the blueprint now to beat Leon? Because we've seen Leon, my opinion going into the Bilal fight was, he's dealt with Kamaru, he's dealt with Colby, he knows how to deal with grapplers, he's got fantastic takedown defense, he's going to be fine. And it seemed like what Bilal maybe did slightly differently was really implement that forward pressure, have minimal respect for his striking, and just kind of put that forward pressure on, and that opened up the takedowns. And that's a path I think Sean Brady can walk. I don't think his striking's as good as Bilal's is maybe, and we saw that maybe in the Bilal-Sean Brady fight from a few years ago. But my concern is if Leon doesn't up his output, up his volume a little bit, he's going to find himself with his back to the cage. Brady's going to come in with a few shots, shoot a double leg, and even if Leon can defend it, he's just up against the fence. He's not going to be able to get any offense off. And that's my concern for that fight.
I think it's interesting because, right, even if Leon wins, I feel like the UK has plenty of stars at the moment anyway. And like some of the people coming up on the undercard even, like I know you're a big fan of Jordan Vucinic. I feel like if he gets a few wins together, he could be there. Like a lot of these cage warriors guys, Nathaniel Wood, I know Sharia is from over in France, but he could be star. Lonnie Kavanagh. Is there anyone from that undercard that you like that you think is the guy that could be the next star in the UK?
Oh, next star is maybe a tricky one. I mean, when I think of like potential next stars, particularly when I'm looking at just like their ability, I'm looking at people like Lerone Murphy. I mean, he's got a fantastic, very captivating kind of backstory. He's not always the most charismatic guy on the mic or whatever, but he's a lovely guy to chat to. We've had him on the show a few times. I'd like to see him really grab some moments in the cage in that small 90 seconds that you get with Rogan or Bisping or whoever it is. Really grab those and call someone out and make a name for yourself in that moment. But I really love Lerone Murphy. I think Jordan's great, but it's early days. Obviously, he lost his debut to Kutar Taladze, which I thought he looked great in that fight as well. It just maybe gassed out. It was a short notice fight or whatever. Lorna Kavanagh is really does look exciting. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm in terms of just like I don't know that what their situation is in terms of like going to the UFC, and obviously star's such a big word. But when you talk about people that I just love, and I think a lot of people gravitate towards, I'm looking at the Hardwick brothers, and I'm just going, I love those guys, man. I really want to see them. I know George had his opportunity in a Contender Series fight and it didn't go his way. But those guys are like, I think they're kind of like local heroes in like the kind of English MMA scene because they just put on great fights as well. Particularly Harry. There's something about Harry where you just go, he's not got that kind of like knockout power. He's that volume striker and stuff like that. But he's quite funny. He does a little, like him and George love a little dance at the end of a thing. I remember being at a Cage Warriors event, and between rounds, he was dancing. He was just mucking about. And I was just like, this guy's nuts. But so I'm a big fan of the Hardwick brothers. But in terms of like UFC stars outside of obviously Tom Aspinall, Paddy, but he's already kind of a star, isn't he? I don't know. I think we're in a great place in terms of like, we've got good fighters, but outside of the obvious, Leon now, Tom Aspinall, Paddy Pimblett, I don't know who the next big star will be. I'm not sure.
There's plenty of possibles, isn't there? And like, just to mention Paddy and like with Paddy and Aspinall and Leon, and there's probably a couple more I'm forgetting about too. Like, this is unbelievable. This is a real great edge for UK MMA. What do you think about? So Paddy's fighting Chandler, so maybe that takes care of itself. This Aspinall Jones thing. Do you think the fight happens? And are you? So I'm a noted, not Aspinall hater. I wouldn't say that, but like I'm a John Jones believer.
No, I listen to your show. I think that's accurate. Yeah,
might be slightly accurate. Are you? Are you on the Aspinall bandwagon? Or are you with me?
Oh, very much so. I am driving that train, my friend. I have been for a while. I think he's the best heavyweight in the world. I think that he would beat John Jones if he would fight him. But it's one of those ones where, like, look, I'm not 100% confident in it. I'm not blindly going, oh, he would smash John Jones easy, blah, blah, blah. But I would like to see how he could deal with Jones's wrestling. Because I think on the feet, Tom would be too fast, too naturally just a much more of a KO artist. And I think his boxing and his footwork would do really well against Jones. The way that Jones causes Tom problems is I think if he gets him down in his on top, because we've never seen it. We know that Tom Aspinall's got great jiu-jitsu, and we've seen him in the fight against Volkov and all that kind of stuff, and so he's got a very good ground game. But more often than not, we've seen him boxing and smashing people inside a round. So, and that's another point that I think Tom's pointed out that in an interview before that I found really interesting, was that John is a fantastic game planner, and there's not much tape on Tom Aspinall because he gets it done so quick. Yes. And I think that's another reason that John might be a little bit wary of him. And the narrative that John is scared is obviously untrue. He's not scared. He's John Jones. But is he concerned about his legacy? I think you're damn right he is. I mean, he didn't want to fight Chael Sonnen on short notice, that to completely stop an entire card because of that. You wouldn't see that in the modern day UFC. Look what Islam Makhachev's done. If Islam Makhachev had that John Jones attitude from back in the day, he only would have had like 2 title defenses. So John is concerned and protective of that legacy. And I think Tom Aspinall fighting this iteration of John Jones as well. What is he, like 37 now or something like that?
Around that, yeah. Getting on.
Tom Aspinall's the biggest threat to him because you look back at John's light heavyweight run. Obviously, some fantastic wins in there. What he did was phenomenal in the early days. The last few fights, Thiago Santos had like no knees and really gave him a tough fight. And a lot of people, including myself at the time, scored the Dominic Reyes fight for Dominic Reyes. And yes, he's come to heavyweight and he dealt with Cyril Gane very, very easily and exposed a huge hole in Cyril Gane's game. But as much as at the time I was one of the people going, I think Cyril Gane's the future of the heavyweight division.
Me too.
Now, I go, I don't know how much that win actually does mean anymore, which is, and I know that's bad, isn't it? Because it's like, at the time I was going, Cyril Gane is great.
And that's
now
Jones's
I'm like,
argument,
I don't know if
isn't it?
Cyril Gane's that good anymore.
That's Jones's whole argument. He's like, well, Cyril Gane was this guy 2 years ago. Now Tom Aspinall's this guy. I'm just going to do the same thing to him again. So
yeah, but he's got to. And the good thing for Tom is that that Pereira lost, because Pereira could step straight up to heavyweight, but I think he needs a fight. I think he needs to fight a Cyril Gane or a Volkov or someone like that, like he did when he moved up to light heavyweight and he beat Jan Blachowicz. I think that, he needs to do that kind of thing if he wants to move straight up. But I do think the rematch is there, and I think it was a close fight, and Partan might go, if I just beat Ankalaev, I can go straight up into a belt and fight for the heavyweight title. So I think that might help Tom out, because the Pereira thing's been taken off the table for John. But I just don't know that the UFC are going to pay John what he wants to take the risk on his legacy. And what do you do? I mean, the Stipe fight was a joke, man. 4 years out of the cage. When he fought Stipe did not have a fight against anyone currently in the UFC. Not a win, a fight against anyone in the UFC. 4 years out the cage or whatever it was, knocked out by Ngannou in his last fight. And there's no shame in getting knocked out by Ngannou. Ngannou's great. And when I say he's not had a fight against anyone in the UFC, well, obviously Ngannou's over in the PFL now.
Yeah.
But it still was not the right fight. I mean, I think that iteration of Stipe Miocic probably loses to most people in the top 5, 6, 7 in the UFC right now. I think Gane might beat Stipe. I think Jailton Almeida could give Stipe a run for his money. I think Volkov could. Curtis Blades could. There's not many people. I mean, I know heavyweight isn't the deepest division in the world, but what was Stipe, like 43 or something like that in his most recent fight? That iteration of Stipe, I don't think is anywhere near the title. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm being harsh.
No,
but
you're right, I think, yeah. My only argument to that would be the fight was made, and at the time it made sense, and then there was injuries, and then they decided to make... So, I think a lot of people were like, oh, you can't believe you made that fight, when the fight was actually made 2.5 years previous to that. But I suppose that's another argument for another day. Blake, I have one more question, and I interviewed John Kavanagh, and I got 29 minutes in before I asked him about Conor McGregor. So when's the next Inbetweeners? No, I'm only going. Do you? And it is a bit, and it's not an in-betweeners question, but kind of an in-betweeners question. Do you know, there's certain bands out there, I think Bob Dylan refused to sing Tambourine Man and things like that, and people just get sick of things out there. Where are you with the in-betweeners? Are you sick of people asking about it, or do you still love it? Is it where are you with it?
So I suppose I go through slight stages with it, and it depends on it depends on the question and the type of question it is, because you get some people that are quite obnoxious and they'll just shout quotes at you and stuff like that, and you're like, I'm with my kids. I mean, it's not appropriate. So let's just calm down. But you also get really lovely people that are just like, I love that show, it got me through a tough time, or, oh, we watch it all the time, it's so funny, can I get a photo, whatever. Never a problem with that. But I suppose there is a thing for me that I'm like, in my career, I have done many different things, but people only really know me for that one thing. And I have had situations where I was at an airport a few years ago and someone was like, oh, you Neil from Inbetweeners? I was like, oh, yeah. And they were like, oh, can I get a photo? Yeah, no problem, mate. Had the photo. Did you not want to act anymore? I was like, mate, I'm literally on my way to a job. I'm working all the time. But it's just people do. I think that one of the reasons for that is the industry, that there's so much content out there now that I think I have moments where I go, oh, sometimes I wonder if doing the Inbetweeners has stopped me from getting other jobs, because people just see me in a specific way, and seeing you as the dumb one in that comedy show means it's going to be hard pushed to get certain types of other conflicting roles. But in a world now where there's so much content that it's very difficult to get your show to stand out from the crowd. There's not many shows every year that you go, oh, everyone's watching that. Inbetweeners is still a little bit of that. It's still I get 15-year-olds coming up to me now. Yeah. They weren't even born when the show first aired. The show is going to be 17 years old this year. It's old enough to be a character in the show. So to sit back and go, oh, I've been in a show that really has made an impact. I don't think there's many actors that get that.
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, especially like I'm working on jobs a lot of the time with actors that, you know, they're fantastic actors. They work all the time, but they've never had that one thing. And I think a lot of them would like to have that one thing, you know, and I've got it. So, you know, I think I have to be, as much as there's moments where you're trying to fight against it, you're also very grateful for it, you know?
Yeah. It like I think the first time like I was a massive fan of the show. Everyone my age, your age was, you know, it's just a matter of fact. Like the first time I saw like yourself and the other three lads doing like an interview or something like that. This might sound like the worst thing I could say about the other three lads, but the three of them are all like a little bit like the characters. And maybe not sexual deviants and stuff like that. But you go with me for a second. Whereas you are not at all like your character in any way, apart from you look like him, you know. So and I get you when you say that, like, because that was a question I wanted to ask you, or something. I was like, that must be so hard to get away from. You know, we hear the word typecast all the time, but like, I can just imagine you walking into a room and people being completely blown away that like you're a completely different character to that character. Do you feel like other roles have maybe helped, and that like because of other roles, another Inbetweeners like role, but in a very different way, like maybe it's a comedy or maybe it's something serious or like that could be. I know, because do you know, I'll give you an example. Right, do you know Michael Imperioli from The Sopranos? He was at
which one was he?
He was Christopher in The Sopranos, right? So
yes, yeah.
He was at a basketball game, I believe, recently, and his picture came up and his name came up, and it was Michael Imperioli, White Lotus. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, that must just be so great. Like he probably thought for his whole life it was going to be Michael Imperioli, Christopher from The Sopranos, and then he got that. Is that something like, you know, is that a dream maybe?
You know what? Yeah, it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think the Inbetweeners will ever go away, but I'd love it to be the Inbetweeners and something. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not comparing myself to him at all, but David Jason, obviously, Only Fools and Horses was a big thing. Mm-hmm. But he also had like a touch of Frost and other things, and he sort of became like, well, he's David Jason. Yeah. And I'm not even saying I need people to go Blake Harrison, because most people don't know my name. They do think it's just Neil from Inbetweeners, like full name. I had a situation years ago where I was out with my brother and his mates in a pub, and it was like Christmas Eve, so everyone was a bit drunk. And a young girl came up to me and was like, they reckon you're off Inbetweeners. I was like, yeah, no, they reckon you're Neil. I'm like, yeah, no, you're not. No, you're not. Show me your driver's license. And I was like, what the fuck do you expect it to say? It's not going to say Neil from the Inbetweeners on the driver's license. So yeah, it was a weird one. But for sure, I mean, look, I've been really, touch wood, quite lucky over the last kind of like 8-9 months. I had a period in 2023 where I hardly worked at all, and it was in this industry. I'm going to wrap it on now again. You're going to have to cut all this out. But in this industry, when you're working, it's the best job in the world. Like, honestly, I love it so much. When you're not working, it's so hard because you're reliant on other people to employ you. And if you're not doing that thing that you love to do, it's not just the financial concerns that you might have. You've lost a part of yourself. And I'd say like 2023 was a really tough year for me, personally, emotionally, mentally, all those kind of things. Because I did like 10 days worth of work in about a year. It was really, really tough. And then 2024 rolled along, and I've been able to go from like a 1940s kind of murder mystery thing written by Mark Gatiss, who is a phenomenal. He wrote Sherlock, and he's a phenomenal actor and writer. He's won Olivier's and stuff, and I'm working alongside him. And then I went off to Budapest and did another modern day police thing, playing a French police detective with a London accent. Don't know how that makes sense, but it's a thing. So I did that, and now I'm doing a film in Australia where it's like a family movie, and I get to be really silly, loads of physical comedy. So, you know, that's the kind of thing where you go, I have to be really grateful for these times of working and when it's going well. Even though the reality is, it's very possible that no one will see that all this stuff I've done, a year's worth of work, and people will still go, "Oh, have you been working for the last 10 years?" And I'm like, yeah, I have.
God, well, hopefully the next time it'll be Blake from the MMA Fan Podcast, not Neil from Inbetweeners, because it'll take off that much. That's what it'll be. Blake, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. If people haven't subscribed to the MMA Fan Podcast, please do. You can find it absolutely everywhere: YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all those good places.
Yeah.
Blake, really appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
No, mate, thank you for having me.